Hi, I'm Embers, he, him.
And I'm Haley, she, her.
I'm Jerika, she, her. And welcome to Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
Wisdom.
Yay! Today's episode is brought to you by not a sponsorship with Pathfinder 2.0. You're out here. We will be discussing character creation for Pathfinder 2.0, and we hope that this is a really useful guide for people who are just starting to use Pathfinder and the character creation.
And if you like this segment, hop over to Twitter, tweet at us, and tell us if you'd like to see more of these for your favorite role-playing games.
Yes.
Let's jump on in.
I've played Exalted. I don't know if I ever made the character correctly, so I would love to revisit that. If anyone has any interest in that, let us know.
Ooh.
Let's start off with a dungeon crawl.
This dungeon's crawling. This is a podcast that we're recording before the ears hear it, but today was a very exciting day for two reasons. One is the Dungeons & Dragons Online Neverwinter expansion pack was announced, featuring
our favorites.
The perennial favorite, Acquisitions Incorporated, presumably focused on the kind of progenitor A-team of Omen Dran and Jim Darkmagic, who are featured heavily in the promo video, which we will link. It's just kind of a crazy thing to see, like the livery of AC Inc., which is something that was born of, Twitter design heads come out in a legit sponsored branded piece of computer game. That was pretty wild. And it had a roller coaster in it, which was also exciting.
I think from what I've seen, the cast is really excited about this release. Amy T. Falcone mentioned that she had known about it for quite a while, and so she was really excited to be able to finally talk about her involvement. Walnut Dongrass, who is her C-Team character, is in the game, along with, as Embers said, some of our A-Team regulars. I, for one, would like to know who else is in this game.
Indeed. The promo lets me know that we have roller coasters, we have interns, we have dark magic, we have Omen,
unknown.
We have holograms, we have giant insect, possibly dark gods. But what else could this expansion pack offer?
Yes. At least I'm hoping we have Wizard Unknown, because they showed Jim pushing Omen out of an airship.
Yeah.
I'm angling for that.
It's very canonical. So that was exciting.
And other video game related news, we're very excited. PAX is starting up as we record this podcast. And so we will have more from that to come for you in a future episode of Insight Check. We're hoping to do some post-PAX roundups.
Ooh. Excellent.
The only other thing I wanted to highlight was there was a little bit of a surreal moment for me. So when I was a kid, I played Magic the Gathering kind of from, one of the first editions that was released and made its way to the East Coast where I lived. So the New Yorker had this article about kind of the 25-year history of this card game. And I've seen the media pick up a little bit more of kind of like the YouTube videos featuring the $30,000 piece of cardstock that has a Black Lotus on it, and it's kind of a little bit in vogue right now. But it was a cool article that focused on kind of the generational battle that they face when they launched a card game in 1994, in a generally, I guess, white bro dude culture that has tried to, at least from the Wizards of the Coast perspective, tried to support and seek a more diverse representation of its fan base, because it has long known that there are fans of all stripes who play the game but don't necessarily feel as welcome as Wizards wants them to feel at cons and tournaments and stuff like that. So it doesn't paint the whole picture. It highlights the travails of broadening and encouraging diversity in like a competitive gaming environment. And it's a little bit of a rosy story, as all New Yorker articles are, but it was kind of a good read. And I remember some of the events as they happened when they were getting summarized, and it was kind of cool.
Very cool.
So we'll link that in the feed too. It's a nice story if you're into that kind of thing. And some of the people they highlight who are part of Wizards of the Coast I think they're really fundamentally good people. So it's interesting to get their perspective on the evolution of that game and that community.
Sounds fascinating.
But enough of that.
For my dungeon crawl this week, I would like to highlight a game by one of our own Shadow Council members contributed art to. There is a Kickstarter going on right now for Thunderpwn, post-apocalyptic arena combat. That is THUNDERPWN on Kickstarter. And Kazimov, who is one of our illustrious Shadow Counselors, did the art for it. And the best way I can tell you how to describe this is like a Thunderdome meets Street Fighter, but with cards, dice, and a hex map with minis. So there's a lot to entice you. So I would suggest checking that out. Just watch the video even. It is quite riveting, this video. And there's a lot of fun voices, and Arnold Schwarzenegger makes an appearance. So it's a good time.
Shadow Counselors do amazing things. It constantly astounds me that the little community that's built up around this.
Everyone's so creative.
Yeah, it boggles my mind.
It's amazing.
I'm catching up on Critical Role Campaign 2 from episode 4, and I'm up to 14 now, and I'm starting to get real strong emotional bonds with some of those characters, so don't spoil anything for me. But the critter community is no exception. Like the art in every form is completely freaking amazing. Like I almost feel like I don't need to consume traditional media because the stuff is so good.
All right. So now that we have done our usual dungeon crawl tradition, let's jump on into our plan for the night. We're going to, as we said earlier, try something a little bit different and walk you through some player creation for some Pathfinder 2.0 content. So in this Pathfinder 2.0 podcast of creation, we are going to walk you through some of the following steps in a plan with me, build with me style thing. So we're going to walk through a general description of who Jerika's character is going to be, what she is hoping to portray there, and then we'll walk through picking your class in the first section, talking about picking backgrounds in section 2, ancestry after that, then we'll do a brief overview of some ability score math before we talk about picking feats and skills. So, are we ready to begin?
Yes.
Want to tell us about your character? Do you have a name picked out already?
Right. So I was at a state fair over the weekend, and at this state fair, there was a.
I'm really excited to see where this goes.
I know, right? It's a little outside baseball, perhaps.
Well, it's okay. I'm ready with a Charlotte's Web scene in my mind.
Excellent. So I sent a picture to the F list that was Dahlia and Hasta award ceremony or something. So there were these plants that were getting judged.
I know what you're going to say, and I'm so excited.
So Air was like, "Ooh, Dahlia Hasta, that's a really good name for a druid." And I was like, yes, I'm using that. Okay, so her name is Dahlia. And she is, the concept is she is a sun witch. So there's kind of this sort of stereotype, I guess, of like a night hag where like these creepy women like creep around at night and like they're witches and like they cavort with you know, beasts of the night.
Right, and they get no vitamin D, so their skin's all withered.
Yeah, and their hair's all like scraggly and whatnot.
Full of nocturnal insects.
Yeah, exactly. So like the opposite of that to me is like a sun witch. So instead of like dark and brooding, she's more Evelyn Marthane as a witch.
Nice.
But to me that means she still does spells and she still, tries to use her agency and her willpower and her gumption to make things happen, to realize things. So, for example, she sits out on sunny days and she draws markings on her skin with an equivalent of suntan lotion so that she has like opposite suntan markings that are light.
Oh, it's like an inverse
Like
henna
the-
tattoo kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like the times when I try to put on sunscreen, except I don't rub it in all the way, and I get handprints all over me.
Yeah, exactly like that. Things
pale
like
girl
that.
Problems.
Yeah.
So does the sun witch of your mind have like a strong communal bond with nature, or is it?
She's real into plants, right? So like she reveres the sun, and therefore she really likes seeing the sun's good works in how plants grow and develop. She's also really into photosensitive stuff. So like there's certain compounds that are really sensitive to light and things like that. So like she gets into that. She like looks for things like that. She's also kind of into creepy daytime animals.
So for example, like if she really resonates with the way that the sun nourishes and breathes life into plant life, could she be really into like pitcher plants or carnivorous plants?
She could be. I don't think that they are any more interesting to her than other. I think actually plants that turn towards the sun are more interesting than carnivorous plants for her.
Like morning glories.
Yeah.
Or like African violets do that. Yeah.
We should talk about plants this whole podcast.
I know. We
I
totally
will talk
could.
about plants for an entire
Plant cast.
podcast. Plant cast.
So getting back to the creepy daytime animals.
Yeah,
I was
sorry.
having
about what is a creepy daytime?
Yeah, so we'll get there in one moment. But I was thinking at night, late at night, the other night, that most of the animals that we consider creepy are nocturnal. So like bats and things like that. Let's say the animals that people associate with witches. So like owls, bats, cats,
I guess.
that kind of, yes, sort
Rats.
of. Rats. You get the idea.
The at names.
Ats.
All the cool animals you want to hang out with, but you're kind of intimidated by at the playground.
Exactly. The ones with the fangies
Yeah.
all come out at night.
Thingies.
So I'm like, there's got to be cool, witchy animals that come out during the day. So my list includes beetles, really cool lizards,
Yeah.
maybe even like salamanders.
Lizards I like because they are like all about the sun.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
cold-blooded melange is really interesting.
Snakes, I think.
Yeah,
Like that's a similar thing. Stuff like that. Birds, I think. So like there's some birds that are actually like super creepy. And I'm not talking like crows. I'm talking like vultures, I
Like
think.
vultures, yeah.
That kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think she has a greater affinity to the plants than to the animals. I think plants for her represent more of a direct response and connection with the sun. And animals represent sort of a, that but once removed kind of thing because they're, carnivores kind of.
Yeah. It's not their sole source of sustenance. Like
Exactly.
It's not as strong a link. I get it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
This is really badass.
And I was thinking a little bit about, so like one of the signature pieces of a witch is her hat, right? It's like her hat and her broom.
Oh my god, daytime hats are so cool
Right.
too.
So I was thinking about this and what I've landed on, and I am willing to take suggestions, is she has probably two of them, the like suntan shields that like reflects sun back up into your face so that you don't just get tanned on one side, you get tanned on both sides. She has like 2 of those on the brim.
These are a thing that exist.
Yeah.
I spend all my time trying not to be burned by the sun's rays, so I've never tried. I do not have the capability of getting a tan, so I've never tried before. This is an interesting concept. I was like, you mean the things you put in your car to reflect the sun?
Kind
away
of.
so that it
They're
doesn't
like
get
that
hot?
material, definitely. Like that's kind of exactly the look. But
Okay.
she has it like on the inside of her hat.
Do you see it? Do you see the hat as a means of conveying the sun into her view, or as a
Isn't that an
means
interesting question?
or as a means of kind of making her become more unto the sun?
This sun mat thing is something that she uses a lot. So it's just like up there now. So she doesn't have to like carry it around.
Gotcha.
So that's my idea. So shall we try to actualize this?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right.
Although we can never let Air play this character because then it would be a ham sandwich.
Oh no.
We're jail. We're jail with you.
Go to jail.
Been sitting on that for like the past 4 minutes and I just couldn't. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Cool.
Wow.
That's bad. But it's done.
No.
I can move on
It's
with my
all
life.
done. You've got to move on now. And
Okay.
when we move on, we're going to move on. It sounds like, Jerika, like you've got your druid class picked out.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm heavily leaning toward.
Mm-hmm.
Getting them herbs, getting them potions,
nice,
and all that
nice.
stuff together.
So let's flip to
So yeah, start with
page-
class. Are you thinking?
Let's start with class. Let's flip to page 43.
So we are using the Pathfinder Playtest rulebook, and we will be referencing page numbers from this book for some of these.
We will link the Pathfinder playtest rules that we're using on the Insight Check page so you can reference this while you make along with us. So, scrolling to page 43 where our classes begin.
I love how they have like a little summary of kind of what's going on with every class on the second page of the classes. So, for example, I'm looking at Druid on page 77 and 78. On page 78, they have a little list of all the sort of important stuff. So every class has a key ability and a lot of other traits that are class dependent for the character. Things like proficiencies, hit points, the skills that you are trained in or signature for your class, weapons, armor, spells, all that kind of stuff is outlined really nicely on the second page of every class.
Yeah, and that's a great place to start if you're trying to figure out what you want to play and want just a general overview of like what's going on with each one in Pathfinder, especially if you're kind of coming from D&D. Some of them do have a slightly different flavor. So I think it's a good place to start. And then you can dig into the ones that you are most
I'm going to write
interested
down
in.
key ability, wisdom. Wisdom. And I'm also going to write down HP, 8 plus con. And the rest is getting into skills and saving throws and things like that. I'm pretty comfortable with Druid for this character. She does have some strong ties to the plant life, the animal life. So that makes sense for me. How would you recommend going about making this determination? What do you think some good advice is for that?
So I think that just having a general concept of like things your character likes or things that they might enjoy doing, I find that's a good place to start.
We kind of did a test run yesterday, Haley, with your character.
Yes, we did a test run of this with my character, Blue, spelled like Blue Cantrell.
I loved your little description that you gave. It was Punch Girl. And I kind of
Punch Girl.
already had like a picture in my mind of like what that might be. Yes. And luckily, I think we both had a similar thought
idea.
because that can go in a lot of different directions. But for you, that meant monk. And yes. I think that if you can get as familiar as you can with the classes, it makes it a lot easier to take your concept and make it as robust as you can given the guidelines, right?
Yeah. And like personally, I tend to go about character building in a slightly different way than Jerika, for example. Like, you've got a really built out idea of what you want your character to be. And I usually have like a flavor, but not any details. And then and then I sort of build in like the choices kind of inform what that story is. So I had just the idea that I wanted to be a punch girl, but I didn't know what kind of punch girl at first, or like even like any of the other pieces or anything else about her, just that she was going to punch things. And then I went from there to like punch things but be a little graceful. So that was like the determination of monk versus fighter versus barbarian. It was like, what kind of punching do you want to do? And then I sort of went from there. So I feel like there's two ways. Do you have a really solid concept that you're really excited to play, or are you not quite sure and you want to let your character evolve as you make it? So I would say, feel like if you just have a general concept, don't feel like you can't move forward until you have a fleshed out idea.
Definitely.
Yeah. The way that I was thinking about it for Druid, at least, what I latched onto was, the nature of this character's affinity to nature and how that character would interact with it. Just happens to be what I latched onto, but you could say the character is utterly fascinated by nature, but in a scientific way, and you might lean towards alchemist, or you might say that, this character is tied to nature from their background. But if it's not something that you as a player want to play into on a regular basis, maybe it could lean towards monk or barbarian, where it's an aspect of your character's history, perhaps, but not something that will be a part of how you fight or how you explore or how you deal with conflict or solve problems.
Definitely.
So when I kind of bounce around and triangulate how I want this character to exist and to be, that's how I attack it.
Yeah, I agree there. And one of the things that I would say, and I'll challenge the wrong word, but I will note to you, Jerika, that if as you go through this, you see that something's really cool, but it doesn't fit into your like formed concept of Dahlia, like way, okay, how married am I to this concept that it would change slightly? And am I okay giving up this cool thing, or do I want to change my idea? Like, don't feel like you have to be done ever evolving your character, but especially you don't have to be done with it at any point until you start playing, really.
Yeah. I mean, I know I suffer from, decision paralysis sometimes. And so I like to have a really clear concept because there's a lot to get distracted by. There's a lot of shinies happening. So I do understand what you're saying that being open to what the rules are telling you is a really good idea. But speaking of the next steps, the next thing we are going to do is talk about background.
Yeah.
So if you're still debating your classes and you want to read, pause the podcast and we'll be here when you're ready for more.
Yay!
All right, so now you've got your class figured out. Woohoo! Good job. I'm very excited for you.
Well done.
Keep on chugging along. We're going to move to page 39. So backing it up a little bit. And we're going to back it up to backgrounds.
There's a couple ways to approach this, I think. One way is the min-max way, where you can say, okay, I'm looking at the ability boosts that this background provides, and I am making that work with my class or my ancestry, etc. Or you can actually take it from a story perspective where, like, I know this character has a noble background or whatever. So I will take that background kind of thing. I tend to do both. So I know that wisdom is really important for druids. That's their key ability. So what I might do is just limit myself to the ones that have wisdom as a must take and see if any of those fit for my character concept. Let's see. I made for myself a spreadsheet of all of these.
One thing I'd say is it's definitely helpful if you if you think about your character and as whether this is the first stop along your way in Pathfinder to making a character, or second or third, as if you do something like we did in the start elsewhere in the character creation process. But if there's a voice in your head that draws you to one of these ancestries or backgrounds, unless it's completely dissonant with the other choices you've made, my bias is always follow that voice, because there's something maybe subconscious, there's something that's inside of you that will help make this character very real and help make playing them very real too. And this is your chance to follow that. So my bias is always, if there's that voice, go for it and try to make the other choices harmonious with it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I tend to be in the non-min-maxi camp, so I would probably even choose something if I were really set on a background, or like that I would make myself kind of just go with whatever I am sort of feeling for that character. And maybe I'd make different choices with what points I put, like what abilities I put points into down the road, which we will get to in one of our next sections, to make up for any kind of lack of synergy between these classes. Or if you have a really strong background concept and class is less important to you, like pick your background first. Have your backstory lead you to what you end up doing down the road. So yeah, maybe you know that your person was a farmer.
Or if we know that if our person is a sun witch, it might not make sense to have a race that has low light vision as a skill.
Yeah, exactly.
She's actually afraid of the dark.
Oh, so
partially, yeah.
So that to me would say you kind of can't do the low light vision of the gnome, because low light vision, if anything, would help demystify and de-scarify the dark.
And I would even pull that into, like, she probably hasn't spent a lot of time, like,
in urban environments,
right? Or maybe something like a criminal background doesn't really make sense, because you might have to spend a lot of time hiding in those things and not being out in the sun and out visible. So in terms of her background and like how she got wherever it is she is now, like, is she more of the adventurous type? Does she like to stick kind of in her home garden? What's her deal?
So she's actually really into the occult, as you might have guessed, because she's a witch. So I think she would be really interested, like she would be inquisitive, I think. And I think doing a job or being expected to be somewhere at a specific time would really get on her nerves. Like she wants to kind of have control of her own time. She wants to reclaim her time.
Totally.
So might I direct your attention maybe to the nomad background?
Isn't that an interesting direction? Yes. What's the skill on that one?
Con and whiz.
We get the assurance feat with survival, and you're trained in a lore skill related to one terrain you've traveled in, such as desert or swamp lore.
That's very cool.
I'm kind of waffling between Nomad and Animal Whisperer.
Yeah, I was the first ones I were looking at were Animal Whisperer, Nomad, and I was kind of trying to concoct a bizarre method of converting either farmhand or scholar, but they didn't really fit well.
Scholar is kind of there, but I do think Nomad might be it.
The sweet spot.
So I looked at farmhand, kind of drew me originally. Like maybe she started out, that was where her affinity for the sun came. She came from farming folk, and then she got interested in the occult somewhere and went off somewhere else. But when you said that she doesn't like to stick to a schedule, that sort of pulled me away from farming, because that has a very rigid schedule.
Specific. But it would also get her in tune with the rhythm of the seasons, right? And she would understand more the movement of the sun from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, or whatever the Pathfinder equivalent is.
Right.
So I could see that as a viable skill, and she isn't a farmhand anymore, right? Because maybe some of these character traits came out a little too hard.
Yeah.
And
it's a little like an X-Files intro, like it was the unassuming, hardworking farmhand who picked up some sort of linkage to the occult through nature and just disappeared one day.
It's just it's interesting.
Left a chicken behind or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And they give little snippets in each background of like a reason that you might no longer be doing this. So one of these is you might simply have tired of the drudgery.
Yeah, exactly. So let's compare that to like Nomad. Let's see.
So you get assurance skill feat, but with athletics instead of survival if you're a farmhand. And then your lore would be farming based for farmhand, and it would be terrain based for nomad.
So the Nomad blurb talks about you get by with few supplies and even fewer comforts. I don't know if Dahlia would like that. I don't know if that's a Dahlia thing. I think she's used to a certain level of civilization.
Indeed.
I think farmhand is actually it's the connoisseur's choice.
Yes.
Connoisseur's choice. Yeah, I think, so for me, just based on your description early on, like I know she still has an affinity with animals, but if it had been Plant Whisperer, like I would have been sold.
So
I think
much.
Farming's got a better connection to the earth and the plants.
That's a really good point. And at the same time, like as a farmhand, she might have interacted with animals too.
Exactly. Like
she might milk the cows and use the dairy to grow exotic fungus in cheese and then cultivate that.
Yeah.
And that's where she got her sense of like, the cows eat the grass and the grass absorbs the sun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you aren't done picking your background, you can pause it right here and we will see you in a bit.
Take your time.
Hey, we're glad you're back. And it's time to talk about ancestry.
Welcome back.
This might be weird if you're not pausing this podcast, but I don't care.
I struggle with this specific character because I want to make min-max choices, but it doesn't necessarily fit the character.
Tell us more.
So it's got to be somebody who tans, right? That's gonna, I think gonna take some people off the list.
I'm with you.
I personally think that there's a lot of interesting things that can be done with dwarf and druid in Pathfinder.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think this is a dwarf.
Ah, okay.
Which, and I want to pick dwarf, but I don't think that's where we are.
That's not who this is.
I'm on the Ancestries table on page 13.
And yeah, my feeling with like why dwarf wouldn't be necessarily a great fit is when you think of dwarves, and this may be stereotypical, but I think of, being perfectly happy living underground.
Yeah, and they do get dark vision. So
yeah.
I feel like there's a little bit of tension there. I mean human, but as you were saying yesterday, Haley, human is the easy way out.
I struggle with being a human. This is what I said yesterday. I said
I struggle with being a human every damn day.
Yeah, exactly. No, that is exactly what I said. Is like I have to do that every day. That's not why I'm playing this game.
Right,
It would be
these
something else.
ridiculous feet and like little pinky toes. What the hell?
What the heck is with this? Yeah,
I know.
No, I don't know.
Screw that.
So of kind of like the remaining, we do have two interesting ideas.
I'm not sure you've got a goblin either.
Yeah.
Although a goblin with a sun hat is an idea that I have not been able to shake this whole time.
It's okay. I'm playing a goblin who's a dancer punch girl.
Love it.
So Halfling has wisdom as one of their ability boosts, which is the key ability for druid. And this might be a halfling.
Small, close to the ground, and the plants on the ground.
Indeed.
Also, when I think about halflings, I think about if I picture, concerning hobbits. It's like pastoral, farmland, outdoors, comforts. I feel like that's a lot of things that you've described. So, all right, what are other options?
So the other one I'm kind of leaning towards is the half-elf ancestry feat that you get with humans. And of course, Air had some issues with this because he has a character that's a half-elf, half-halfling, and has no human ancestry whatsoever. With a mom like Rosie Beestinger, I don't know about that. Yeah, so if you want to play a half-elf or a half-orc, it is a feat that you take on the human ancestry, just to let you know. For half-elf, then, I could choose ability boosts that are useful for my class. And
Interesting. And I talked about this yesterday, is that I love elves. I have an elf affinity. And I think that the elf ancestry really, I find them, when I think about elves, I think of very in tune to nature. I think about, the seasons. And so I think that would really lends itself well to your Sun Witch.
And she's also really into the occult as well. So I think that half elf might actually
learning
work. Yeah, the scholarship, things like that.
I like that.
I have a funny question though. What would the lifespan be of a half elf versus an elf versus a human?
You're gonna have to ask Air. I don't know off the top of my head.
Half elves tend to live longer than other humans, often reaching an age of around 150 years old.
Perfect. The reason I say this is because if you're going to be highly attuned to nature, I think there's this little flavor bonus, and this is just me being a lunatic, to be able to live long enough to see like a giant redwood mature.
Ooh.
But that's all I got. So continue.
Very cool.
I like that. And they are, just for a point of comparison, the Pathfinder rules do say that humans tend to live to about 90. So that's your comparison.
Nice.
Between half-elves. So you get a bonus 60 years.
So now we can start talking about our ability scores. Mm-hmm. Now that we have our three main components. So how ability scores work is a bunch of math that we will get into in a moment. If you haven't finished picking your ancestry at this point, please pause here. And you're back. Thanks.
You're back. So I found, when we did this last night, I found it very helpful to be on page 20, where they have step-by-step instructions on walking you through every piece of the math here.
Yes, so, for what it's worth, I thought this was one of the highlights of the way they wrote this rule book. I really liked it.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And they have examples all along the way. And we'll give you another one with Ms. Dahlia.
Yes, so you start out with 10s across the board.
Except the Russian judge gives you an 8.
Of course.
Of course.
So on all of the ancestries except human, there are flawed abilities. And so that's the Russian judge telling you to lower your score down to 8 exactly. But because I have chosen half-elf, I get instead 2 free ability boosts, and no flaw because I'm kind of missing a third ability boost that the other ancestries get.
So the way that I found it was helpful to do this, if you've got your pen and paper out right now and you're walking along, is I wrote down in each a row of its own. I wrote strength, dex, con, int, wiz, and cha, and I wrote 10s down the column. And then I looked at my ancestry and I said +2 to charisma, +2 to dexterity, -2 to wisdom. And then I said, okay, then my ancestry's done. And then I went to my background and I did the same, and my class, and I did the same. And then I totaled that all up at the end because that worked very well for my brain.
That is really helpful. So I have a lot of, in my boosting right now, I have a free boost from Farmhand, and I have 2 free boosts from my ancestry. So I'm thinking about what things I might want to boost here. I think maybe not intellect.
Well, you said that one you wanted to boost was wisdom, right?
Yeah. So that gets a boost from Farmhand, and that gets a boost from the class Druid. And so we also learned last night that you can't boost the same ability with your class boost twice. You can't boost the same ability with your ancestry boosts twice.
And same with your human. Since Jerika picked a human, she can't put both of her human boosts into wisdom. She has to put one into wisdom and 1 into constitution, or whatever she chooses to do. But you can't dump everything all into one place. So what did you choose for those 2 human boosts that you get?
So I'm still thinking about it. I think it's gonna be con and int, and then I have one more from farmhand.
Yeah. So once you do that, so what did you get? You had 2 farmhand ones, so you had to choose between Wiz and con, right?
Yeah.
For one of them. So which one did you choose?
Wiz.
Nice. So now you've got 1 free one, which you could put in con, but you cannot put in Wiz.
And I'm like, so right now her strength and her dex are flat. So I'm wondering if...
Is she my mental picture is not necessarily a strong girl.
Yeah, I think
maybe
you're right.
She's a nimble girl.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Or she's just a smart girl.
Okay, so what I'm looking at currently is strength 10, dex 12, con 12, int 12, wiz 14, charisma 10.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And now the final, or not the final piece, but the next piece, if we're following our Pathfinder rules book guide to doing this math, is you get 4 free ability boosts. And just like in the other sections, you can't dump all 4 of these boosts into the same thing. You get 2 points for each of the 4, so 8 total points, but you can't split them up out of their sets of 2. And so you get to choose wherever you would like those ones.
Yep, so I'm going to just put them in the ones that I have things in. So
just
then it's going to be strength 10, dex 14, con 14, int 14, wiz 16,
right,
cha 10.
And have you already added your wisdom from your class?
Yes.
Nice. So now, congratulations, you've done all the maths.
Much of the maths.
And if you are still debating, now would be a great time to pause, finish up those maths, and then we will move on into feats. But not the kinds you stand on.
Cut that out. I want to talk briefly about hit points. So you get hit points from your class and you get hit points from your ancestry.
And they're relative to one of your stats, too. So you've got 3 components there.
So let's get the ancestry.
While you're looking for that, I looked up the druid for you. And you've got 8 plus whatever your constitution modifier is.
Thank you.
And there is a nice handy conversion in the math section where it tells you what those modifiers add to, but it's basically +1 for every number over 10 and -1 for every 2 numbers under 10. Or every 2 numbers over 10 and every 2 numbers under 10.
Hit points 8. Okay, so it's hit points 8 plus con, right?
Plus your con mod.
Which is 2.
We are playing level 1 characters. That might have been a good thing to mention to you at some point.
We're building level 1.
Rolling level 1 right now.
So I currently have 18 HPs. And
Nice.
I feel extremely comfortable about picking feats right now.
You have more hit points than my punch girl.
Nice. The first one is easy.
So let's talk about feats as a concept first.
Yeah.
So feats in Pathfinder, you get them from all these different sections. So you get feats from your background, feats from your ancestry, feats from your class. And when you're building your character, you kind of have a 2 choices.
You have a 2 choice.
2 choices. You can either pick the feats as you pick the class's backgrounds and ancestry, etc., or you can pick them kind of in bulk all at once you've got those. So that's what we're going to do here. So you're going to start with your class feat first?
Nope, I'm going to start with my ancestry feat, which is going to be half elf.
Half
Yes,
right.
yes. That's how it works.
There you go. What does that get you? What bonuses do you get from half elf?
I think does it give you access to...
I gain the elf trait. I can select elven speed, elven tongue, gifted speaker, which gets me trained in diplomacy, low light vision I could get, which I won't take. Right. So I'm probably going to either take Elven tongue or elven speed. And I'm leaning toward elven speed.
That would be that was my guess as well, because plants don't speak elf.
They speak druidic.
Oh yeah.
So that is that. I think class is going to be probably the most complicated. So let's look at background.
Look at your background. And those ones are set when you picked out your background. So as a farmhand, we talked about this briefly. You get the assurance skill feat with athletics, and you're trained in the farming lore skill. But we'll just talk about the assurance skill feat for now.
All the skills are listed with additional dialogue in separate sections of the book. Alrighty. And then class. So classes have feats based on level. And since we are playing level 1, I have a smaller subset to choose from. And therefore my FOMO can be squelched once again.
Yes. I'm around page 79 on my file. I have a Druid advancement table that has level 1 class features, and maybe that's where it gets started.
Yes, I see it. I also get an ancestry feat at level 1. That's probably the one I just took. I get druidic.
Your half elf.
Yep, I get my spell casting, and I get wild empathy. Okay.
Sorry, did I miss? Did you choose an order?
I don't. Do I need to?
It says upon becoming a druid, you align yourself with the druidic order, which grants you a class feat, an order power, and an additional signature skill tied to your order.
Ah, that's
so
where
you can
the skill
still gain class feats tied to other orders as you advance. You receive additional benefits when using abilities tied to your chosen order.
Yeah, so I think the orders are animal, leaf, storm, and wild.
Yeah, and also meta. But that might not be an order. That might just be another tag.
Seem to be a set order. It seems to be like a type.
Yeah. So I think she would be leaf order.
Nice.
But with some meta magic flavor.
And you gain the leshy familiar feat.
Yes, indeed. I think that might be the one.
And you can cast Good Berry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think she would take something like create water so she could always water the plant friends. And so now we have some feats and all of our other stuff. I think for my character, she would pick something like create water and summon nature's ally for her spells. Equipment is a whole different story. That is something you have to go through and buy one by one, and that's going to be really tailored to your own character. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to go into how that crunchy stuff and how that works with Dahlia. If you ever have any questions about that or anything while you're making your character, just add us at Insight Check. At Insight Check Pod on Twitter.
Yeah.
We are always happy to answer your questions.
Cues.
And if folks want to get into that crunchy stuff, we can make time for it. We can continue Dahlia down the rabbit hole towards completion, and
you can watch her grow.
Could be part 2.
Yes, indeed.
I already love Dahlia.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I feel strongly about this Sun Witch. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode. We hope you found this path to Pathfinder useful as a part 1, and we look forward to hearing if this led to interesting character creation choices for you. So please add us at Inside Check Pod on Twitter. While you're at it, if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave a comment or give us a rating on the iTunes or however you consume this content. We'd also like to thank deeply Vince Vept for our theme music called Never Stand Alone. We'd also like to thank the incredible, indelible, and now eternalized in video games, Amy T. Falcone, for our pretty chibi faces, because without her, we would just be a bunch of bones rattling around.
That would be creepy.
I think so too. Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
was
Insight Check!
Woohoo!
circle of life. Boom.
And it moves us all. All right. Are we good with your background?